following program deals with military and veteran issues. All comments and opinions expressed on this show are those who made them. They do not reflect the opinions of the Church of Satan or Radio Free Satan. So on with the show.
Welcome to the Infernal Legion podcast, the very first episode of 2020, and it's going to be a hell of a year. We've got the impeachment happening. We've got the presidential election happening. There's all kinds of shit going on in 2020, and we're very happy that you could tune in and hear us and our surly little selves to start off your... So, without further ado, I am Jeff Bowling.
No shit.
Without further ado, I am Jeff Bowling, the commander of the Infernal Legion, and with me, as always, is my wonderful Sasquatchy co-host, Duwayne Burns. How the hell are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Sasquatchy, huh?
Yeah, Sasquatchy. Well, I mean, you're tall, you're big, you're covered in hair.
There's the first fuck you of the new year.
And, of course, our ever-present and completely capable producer who has been struggling all night to make shit work right. Please welcome Jeff Ivins.
Are you nervous?
Hey.
All right, gentlemen, how the hell are we doing today? How was New Year? Before we even get started, how was New Year's Eve for you guys?
I was asleep.
I am surrounded by old men.
Well, no, I'm not going to be out on the roads on New Year's Eve, New Year's night with cops that have got hard-ons to stop people. So it's like,
or the freedom-loving DUI checkpoints.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is no bullshit, but one of my kids' teachers got killed in a fatal car accident New Year's Eve. So I don't fucking go out either.
Well, fuck, way to bring down the goddamn mood, Dwayne.
Hey, it's just to say why I don't fucking go out.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't go out either. I stayed at home and watched music videos and got wasted. But I was still awake when the ball dropped, as it were.
How was your get-together with Kohlmeyer for the movie?
That, I had work.
Holy dog shit! Texas, only steers and queers come from Texas, private cowboy!
But yeah, no, I from what I hear, he had a really good turnout, and it was a good time. Although I'm not sure, I still have, because of that, I haven't been able to watch the new Star Wars movie. But from what I've heard, The Rise of Skywalker seems like the wrong title. It should be the Saga of Palpatine.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
Well, until you go see it, I mean, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but until you go see it, I did go see it. I can understand through reading comic books and shit in the past how it ties into canon and how it.
Well, I mean, of course, anything Star Wars can tie into canon as long as Disney allows it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this isn't giving anything away, but you know how Star Wars did the whole thing in Phantom Menace with the Immaculate Conception of Anakin Skywalker. Kind of like a Jesus birth, the virgin birth, blah blah. He's going to be the savior of the Force, whatever. Well,
which would have been great if that actually came out first, because then his heel turn would have been epic.
Right. Well, the comic book Darth Vader number 25, it comes out with Vader just doing certain things to try to find his place in the Force. He's evil now, blah blah blah. Well, there's a point in it where he meets a ghost who's trapped in a mask, and if you don the mask, you gain his dark side power, and he can kind of take over your body. Well, he went through this whole thing, and it took him through segments of his life. And in a portion of it, it showed Shmi, who was Anakin's mother, surrounded by a red glow, and it was Palpatine. And it shows that Palpatine was impregnating her with the dark side.
So this just goes to further prove my point that this entire 9-movie arc has been the saga of Palpatine, not of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Well, Palpatine always hated being called Palpatine if you read the Darth Plagueis book. And so, I mean, Palpatine is technically Anakin's father according to this. And I'm sure you've heard this bit of leakage from the movie, but Palpatine is Rey's grandfather.
No, I haven't heard that.
Oh, well,
yeah, that's why I said it should be the saga of Palpatine originally, because
if you put the two things together, it goes all the way around as Skywalker.
Yeah.
You know, Palpatine is a Skywalker, even though he's Palpatine. You know, because he's the father of Anakin through creating him through Immaculate Conception, through the Force. He's also the grandfather.
I think one thing that all of us can agree on when it comes to Star Wars is that the holiday special is the best thing they've ever done.
Yeah.
Space Force.
Space balls.
Space Force. You know what? 2020 rolled in with the brand spanking new news that Space Force has been officially approved. It will be the next branch of the military. They are in the course of building it right now, so I can't wait to see what their uniforms look like.
I want to hear what their private rank's going to be.
Private cadet.
Asteroid Pebble. Moon dust.
The fairy fucking godmother.
That might be the most appropriate placement you've ever had.
The 4-star general will be like a fucking gigantic black hole. I don't fucking know.
Well, today, the day we're recording this podcast, is Religious Freedom Day in the United States of America. And for anyone, I'm assuming you do, because why else would you tune into Radio Free Satan and listen to the Infernal Legion podcast if you didn't follow the Church of Satan? The Church of Satan does a celebration for this every year. It's always a big deal. So I want to ask you, gentlemen, what does religious freedom mean to you?
Go, Duwayne.
Go, Duwayne. Always go, Duwayne.
Yeah.
Put me on the fucking spot always.
Well, you are the co-host.
I'm just the producer.
You got an awful lot to say for a producer. No, I'm just giving you shit. It just means for me to be able to have the ability to believe the way I want. And, you know, I mean, many countries out there, you can't do this. Saudi Arabia, for instance, I mean, you're asking to be in a town square with your head lopped off. It's just basically my ability to be able to do what I want religiously, when I want, take what I want, leave what I don't want, and, you know, I mean, because I had Catholicism and Baptists shoved down my throat my entire life, and, you know, it gives me the ability to say I want this and I don't want that,
without any concern about society in general or government saying otherwise. Yeah.
And you know, government, you know, is supposed to be separate from religion, but every fucking chance they get, they got to have a chaplain come in and say a prayer, and they got to God bless America, and they've got to, you know.
Or, change the national motto to "In God We Trust."
Yeah.
Right.
But it should be E pluribus
E
numerus.
pluribus unum.
Which is a much better motto for the country we are supposed to be.
Yes.
That's a
great
whole other
melting,
conversation.
Yeah, this great melting pot of America.
So what about you, Jeffrey Ivins? So the people out there aren't confused.
Basically, to me, it's just the freedom to express yourself on who you are, how you are, and if others don't like it, they can go fuck off.
Yeah, that's good. I always think back personally. I always think back to Anton LaVey's essay, "Satanism is Americanism."
Yeah.
Not necessarily what he specifically said in that, though I agree with what he was saying in that. But it always makes me think of the American ideal and what America is supposed to be, what the great experiment is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's a part of that great experiment is liberty, the ability for every individual to be, I hate to use the term because it's not exactly right, but I'd say equal with what the King of England was at the time of the Revolution.
Yeah.
That's what the forefathers wanted to avoid. They wanted to avoid having a king over here.
Yeah.
Right. And the way you do that is by making everyone the king of their own
domain.
Right.
Their own land, their own whatever you want to throw in there. But that there was no singular entity that could tell us, what we could say, what we could do, whether or not we could defend ourselves, so on and so forth. The rundown the Bill of Rights. And one of the most important, it's the very First Amendment, just to be fucking clear, as if, the Constitution itself wasn't clear enough. Just to be clear, in the very First Amendment, they made sure to note that freedom of religion is an enshrined right in this new country. And the freedom to practice as you will, believe as you will, think as you will. And that along with speech and petition and assembly, to me, those are some of the most fundamental ideas of what freedom means. Now, we could go on for hours about how we've gotten away from that in this country, because I think all three of us would agree we've gotten pretty fucking far away from it.
Oh, yeah.
But the freedom of religion is something that people, even Christians, the sects of Christianity, certain sects of Christianity, take very seriously. And I think that's a good thing, that we can believe as we will, worship as we will, do what it is that we...
Within the confines of the law.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah, the law.
Because because a lot of those certain sects that you're talking about are like the Branch Davidian out there, where you got a guy who's thinking he's the Messiah. He's got 40 wives and he's fucking little girls. That's you have the freedom to do what you want, but
in that specific case, you have the freedom to do what you want, except for talking shit about the government and having a large army.
Yeah.
That's what happened with the Branch Davidians. But there's a lot of places we've gone wrong. Like I said, we could go on for hours about that. But I think the ideal of the freedom of religion is the keystone, and that's something I really enjoy. And I really enjoy personally that the Church of Satan always makes an effort to put forth something special on the day where we celebrate the freedom of religion in this country. This year it was a wonderful essay by Magus Gilmore, which I highly recommend that everyone go to www.churchofsatan.com and read that essay. It's under the news section. In the past,
I'm sure we could copy and paste that into the Infernal Legion.
We already did. Yeah, we already did.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you got it yet. I don't. Well, send them there as well.
But it's when it hit home for me. When it really hit home for me, because it was always just an ideal. It was always just a thing, an ethereal concept. But when it hit home for me was when I was in Iraq. They don't have religious freedom.
No, they don't.
There. Not the way we do. There are Christians and there are sects of Islam. But the Christians and a lot of the smaller sects of Islam are routinely kidnapped, tortured, executed, what have you, because there is no enshrined law in their founding documents that say that they have this freedom. And as a result, you see what to steal a term from President Trump, what a shithole Iraq has become. Now, and of course, there's economic things and political things involved in that as well, but it all kind of goes back to the lack of freedom of religion.
Yeah, I had noticed while I was over there that when it became time for that imam to climb that tower and get on the loudspeaker, that the Christians would disappear off the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're a person walking on the street, you carry your rug with you wherever you go. So that when that call to prayer comes out, Allah, you get your ass down on your knees and you're doing it. Because if you're not, your ass is in deep trouble.
Yeah. And when I was deployed to northern Iraq, we had right outside. I mean, the back of the graveyard literally touched the wall to the base that we were stationed on, and it was a Christian graveyard. And this is in northern Iraq, where the Kurds are the majority.
Right.
But even then, almost every day you'd hear stories during the intel briefings from the tower guards who had to shoot at people who were coming into the graveyard to desecrate the graves of Christians who had died and been buried there. And so this is not to lend any credence to the idea that Christians are persecuted, because in the United States of America, they are fucking not.
They're the ones who persecute.
But if you go overseas to certain places, even the Christians don't have freedom of religion. And so, I mean, maybe it's a patriotic notion, but what a wonderful country we live in, where we can have a satanic podcast on a satanic podcast network that's endorsed by and put out by the Church of Satan, and not fear pretty much anything other than stupid people. We don't have to fear anything from the government. Nobody's going to tell us we can't.
No knock on the door because they've zoned in on our radio signal, and next thing you know, we're being marched out and shot in the middle of the road.
You don't scare me!
I own a lot of guns, so
watch it. That might come from red flag.
But yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful country to live in and a wonderful ideal to embody, and I'm proud that the Church of Satan celebrates this notion every year. But on with the show. We have a wonderful guest who I've been trying to get on for a long time. She doesn't believe in modern technology because she hates everyone. But we finally got her. We found a way to get her on, and we're going to have a wonderful interview with her up next. So stay tuned for the first ever female and United States Air Force vet we've ever had on this program. And we'll be right back in a second.
Take a trip back to the 1980s with me, Warlock Jeff Ivins, on the Metro Radio Free Satan's show, highlighting the new wave and other hits from the indulgent decade, only on RadioFreeSatan.com.
This is Reverend Gene, the host of Vox Satanae, exclusively on Radio Free Satan. Join me every week as we indulge in the classical side of music spanning the past 1,000 years. Vox Satanae has already featured over 700 composers covering medieval, baroque, classical, romantic, and contemporary music, including chant, choral, opera, keyboard, and orchestral music, with composers ranging from Gluck to Gilmour, Bach to Bellavance, Tallis to Taverner, and Paganini to Pärt. Get your weekly recommended dose of classical music right here on Vox Satanae, only on Radio Free Satan. With me, Reverend Gene. Hail Satan.
Welcome back to the Infernal Legion podcast for the month of January 2020. That's right, the very first episode of the new year. We at this time are joined by a fantastic guest who I've been trying to get on the show numerous times, but because she eschews any type of greater technology, it's been a little bit of a pain in the ass. So everyone, please welcome United States Air Force veteran Evelyn Eve to the program.
Hello.
How are you, Evelyn?
Fine, thank you. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing all right. So we have a kind of standard way we go about these interviews. So I'm going to ask you first, why did you enlist in the military, and specifically the Air Force?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. I could give you the whole heroic nonsense that, a lot of people do. But really, it just comes down to economics. Very, very poor family. Lived in an area out in the middle of nowhere, no car, food stamps. It wasn't looking good for me. So I started to sign up, but I've always been semi-intelligent, I'd like to think. And they were like, yeah, your scores are like Air Force stuff, so how about we make you a mechanic? And I'm like, that sounds good. It was literally like, okay, I never turned a wrench in my life. And they're like, well, you got, aptitude, what have you.
Don't worry, we'll show you how to do that. Don't worry.
Yeah, military, yeah. Military.
Same thing happened to my nephew. He went in thinking he was gonna fly jets, and he didn't have. You telling me to hold on?
Yeah, she got bumped. Jeff?
I'm working.
Okay.
Says unavailable. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. She may still be on the phone. I hate Skype. Yeah, she's still on the phone.
She's probably going, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's saying unavailable. Technical difficulties, people.
In 1966, Anton LaVey created the Church of Satan, marking the beginning of the Age of Fire and Year 1 Anno Satanis. In 1969, he published the Satanic Bible, codifying Satanism as a religion, the first time it's been done in human history.
In the name of Satan, ruler of the earth, king of hell, come forth from the pit, bestow the blessings of hell upon us. For we are your children, and we invoke thee this night.
In 2001, I was appointed High Priest of the Church of Satan. In 2007, I published the Satanic Scriptures, further defining and expanding on Satanic philosophy and greater magic ritual.
Hail, Satan full of might! Hail, Satan full of might! Our allegiance is with thee! Our allegiance is with thee! Cursed are they! Cursed are they! The God adorers! The God adorers! And cursed are the worshippers! And cursed are the worshippers! Of the Nazarene eunuch! Of the Nazarene eunuch!
For the past 50 years, the Church of Satan has stood as the sole organization to define and defend Satanism as a religion. And though pretenders to the infernal throne have come and gone, we have stood the test of time and will into the future. Visit churchofsatan.com for more information and read the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Scriptures. Knowledge is the solution for ignorance. Hail, Satan!
Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan!
All right, apologies for the technical difficulties there, folks. But Evelyn, you were telling us about turning a wrench in the Air Force.
Yes, sir. Wrench in the Air Force. Well, I always loved flying things, fascinated by birds. I always loved giant robots, machines, grew up on all those giant mech Transformers cartoons on Saturdays. And I'm like, hey, this is cool. I could at least work on some cool machines and put some things in the air.
That's been that's been our conversation whenever we've talked, our Transformer collections.
Yep, I'm still adding on those.
So did you get to work on any actual Transformers? Is the government lying to us?
I can't tell you. I'll have to tell you if I did.
Sounds like
Space
one of my
Force.
Sounds like one of my lines.
So did you actually get to work on the aircraft, or were you like a wheeled mechanic?
I was a hangar crew chief, home station check.
Wow,
we tore
nice.
up we tore up the airplanes, went deep inside them, poked around. Mostly cargo and bomber aircraft, but occasionally I'd work on an A-10 or something. But
right. Well, so a lot of people a lot of veterans. Let's just put it that way, because the Air Force is the smallest branch of service. So a lot of veterans they don't really know what day-to-day life is like in the Air Force. So can you walk us through like what day-to-day life was like in the Chair Force?
Chair Force? Well, I was a crew chief, so I actually worked.
Right.
But with me, it was just I lived on base with my spouse and child.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got up, went to work, checked into the hangar, went through the security checks, what have you. Got my assignment for the day, went out, did about 5 minutes of wrench turning and about 45 minutes of paperwork, and then did that a couple times, rinse, repeat, a little bit of drama here, drama there, human beings.
Right.
9/11 stuff happened. Things got really hectic. We were in the hangar 18, 20 hours a day sometimes. Cargo aircraft,
Right.
But really, it wasn't anything spectacular. There's the whole thing that they're almost like a corporation, and I guess that's fairly accurate. We worked alongside the Boeing guys, civilians. You had the sergeants walking around pretending they were working,
like they do.
Yeah. While we did all the, we did the grunt work and what have you. It gets romanticized a lot. Everybody thinks you're going to go out there and do heroic things or whatever, but it depends on your career.
Grunt work.
Yep, grunt work.
Quick, Evelyn, give us an example of an Air Force grunt.
Not security forces. That doesn't count.
Yeah, not mercs.
An Air Force grunt is someone who likes to think they're smarter than all the other grunts.
No. I want to hear a hoo-ah or give us an example of an Air Force grunt. In case
you mean actually
war phase?
Yeah.
War phase.
Oh well, one of my MTI, he told us that we just were to say we're not cavemen or cheerleaders. We don't do that.
Jesus H. Christ.
In case you didn't know, I'm in charge of comedy relief on the show. So.
Yeah, he is the biggest clown around.
So so my ex-wife was Air Force, and she said that they didn't use it like we did, but they said hua the same way the Army does. Probably because they came out of the Army originally.
Originally. Yeah, we weren't like we were boring, dull, stick up our butt mechanics. So we're not really drunk.
Well,
the drunken stories and whatever.
None of my four ex-wives were in the military. Now, one of my ex-old ladies was. All of you might know her, but
yeah, we're not going there. So you said after 9/11, let's just say shit picked up in the shop. What type of you said you were on cargo planes. Were you actively shipping equipment or troops to the Middle East, or what exactly?
As far as I know, yeah, a lot of troops, a lot of supplies. Occasionally, if one of the B-52s came in, patched her up, sent her out. But it was a blur. I just had a newborn kid at the time too, so it was kind of like, holy crap, things are just going. You're tired. You get in that whole discipline, follow orders, and you don't even know where you're at half the time because you're so tired. But it was, like I said, it my experience was pretty low key. We were in hangars. We were technical field. We took our time on things. We could help it. We weren't in too many rushes. I
imagine that everyone in the military likes to talk about attention to detail, but I imagine that's probably a little bit more severe in a hangar bay where you're working the aircraft.
Yeah. You don't turn off one of the hydraulic lines. You get 4,000 psi in your face, and that's not too hydraulic fluid. Good. Yeah, it's not too fun.
And usually it's at a pretty high temperature.
Yep.
Speaking of that,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, speaking of that, what are some of the best accidents that ever happened while you were working on the?
Oh boy! A lot of it was just pranks and stupidity, but the one thing that cracked me up the most was one of our sergeants. He was training us on how to operate a hydraulic jack.
Mm-hmm.
And the dude's just going on and on and on. He's rambling, he's pumping, he's rambling, he's pumping, and the jack's getting tighter and tighter, and you could just see everybody just kind of slowly backing off. And you hear a pop, whoosh, the whole fluid goes up like a geyser. He's covered from head to toe in fluid. He has to go to the med hall to make sure he doesn't have any blood poisoning or not blind or nothing. Looked like a horror flick because the hydraulic fluid kind of red. and he just came out of
I always thought one of the greatest jobs in the Air Force, or one of the neatest jobs in the Air Force, would be to sit in the back of a fueler and feed the line out to the aircraft. I thought that would be awesome.
The in-flight refuels?
Yeah, where the guys are sitting in the ass end of the vehicle and they're laying down and all they can see is the ground below them and they're feeding out the fuel hose.
Nope.
I think that would have been a neat fucking job.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'll leave the excitement to the.
Well, I just jumped out of it, so I don't know.
Right, I was going to say I've been a paratrooper and I've done skydiving recreationally, so I don't think it bothered me to lay down and see the earth below me. And
if one of you would have figured out I fixed the airplane you were on, I wouldn't blame you for jumping out. So.
So let's talk about the end of your military career, because you're medically retired from the Air Force, and not a lot of veterans have gone through the medical retirement process. So what is the process like?
Well, it's medical kind of in retrospect. They tried to get me out for one reason. VA evaluated things, had my back, got things taken care of for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was, like I said, it was during the whole 9/11 thing. I got injured. And it's like, you're out, you can't deploy, so we're giving you the boot, and it was rushed, and it wasn't a lawful discharge. So I had to.
So they basically pushed you out, and you had to appeal it afterwards, after the fact.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, after the fact. So.
Yeah.
So did you?
They classify you non-deployable and do that.
Did you deploy with your aircraft, or were you basically stateside, like sending it off? How did all that?
Stateside, because the home station check guys were a different breed of animal than your flight line guys.
Okay.
The flight line guys were the ones who went and deployed more. We could from time to time, but they taught us a little more about the airplane, so they like to keep us back home as much as possible. So
I find it very interesting that a job, and not to talk down about the job or anything. Obviously, it's a job like any other in the military. But I find it very interesting where deployability status would matter in a job where you're primarily stateside. But that was apparently enough for them.
They tried to say my injury got in the way of my job performance, but I was eligible for early promotions and like 80% of the way through my training. my next skill level, and I still had 12 months to get that other 20% or whatever. So I think there was a lot more to it, but that's purely speculation, and I don't want to.
Sure. Well, the Air Force certainly does not have the best track record of taking care of their own, if that makes sense.
No.
So
There was a saying, like, I can't remember what it was, but there's this joke that, the Army guys do solemnly swear to get promoted once, demoted twice a year. And the Air Force I do solemnly swear to wipe the knife off before I stab the next guy in the back with it. It was funny. It was kind of funny,
So, and I've heard, and I'm going to talk a lot about the culture of the Air Force because you're the first Air Force veteran we've had on the program. So, from what I understand, the Air Force is very career driven. So things like becoming a tech instructor or we call them drill sergeants or whatever would actually be seen as a deviation from your career path, and it's not something that's desired by members of the Air Force. What is that mentality like in general? Obviously you don't have much to compare it to, but what is it like?
It's like the way they do it is promotions are usually done time in. And, it's surprisingly not extremely merit based until you start getting up to tech.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on your career field, but most techs as crew chiefs got moved into admin positions, managing stock, calling in orders, checking on flight status, and what have you. And most people actually, at least as crew chiefs, from my understanding, look forward to moving into that position. A lot of us didn't like being down at the bottom and, lugging all the stuff around and turning all the wrenches all the time.
Right.
So I said I can't speak for any other, career in the Air Force, but where I was at, it's people legit look forward to it because there was this saying, when you got your little chevron over there going down, shit falls in, but once you hit the tech and up, and when you get that little roof on top, all the shit rolls off.
Shit rolls downhill.
Yep.
And the Navy, all the ranks are upside down. So,
I warned my nephew when he went in the Air Force. I said, "Look, he thought he was going to get in a plane and fly it. He was going to." And I told him, I said, "Well, look," I said, "first of all, you don't have 20/20 vision." "Well, I wear contacts." "Well, you don't think G-forces are going to push the contacts to the rear of your eyeball?" I said, "Look," I said, "if you don't have 20/20 vision or 20/40, or 20/10, pardon me, basically your job's going to be scrubbing bird shit off a runway in Zimbabwe." I mean, And
That's right.
That's about it,
Well, I noticed that too. So the Navy and the Air Force seem to have the best post assignments.
But they have the most backstabbing too,
for sure.
Because
what I'm saying is
people are fighting for jobs.
Like an Air Force base, you can find an Air Force base in places like Las Vegas, Nevada. But whereas Army bases are in bumfuck nowhere, Kansas.
Yeah. It's like when guys used to make fun of me for being in the Air Force. I'm like, now I'm going to have to go back to my hotel room and cry in my hazmat.
Right. Speaking of hotel rooms, that's actually, and I know that's a question that everyone always has. The single airman, you said you were married and you lived on post, so I'm assuming you had base housing. But did you ever get a chance to visit the single airman dorms?
Oh, fuck. I was in the Army, and I did. The housing and the chow halls for the Air Force. My God.
Yeah, well, you like you said, you were in the Army. Evelyn, what were the dorms?
They were beautiful.
Well, the housing I had in the Air Force is better than the housing I have now. Yeah, so.
Well, that's something, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
No, what I was saying, Jeff, though, is I've seen the Air Force stuff. They're fucking beautiful.
No, I understand that, but you have something to compare it to, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
She doesn't have anything to compare it to except for the house she lives in now. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about Satanism. When did you first discover Satanism?
Okay, long story. I'll try not to make it too long. I was born, like most people, Christian house, raised Christian. Never felt right. I've always been fascinated by religion with humans and how it's almost necessary for us, dogma. Mm-hmm. And so I looked around a lot, and I fell out of Christianity, and I had this brief stop in Gnosticism.
Okay.
And I became an ordained minister through one of those places. Anybody could be ordained. No big deal. And so while I was hanging out in these Gnostic circles, someone got the bright idea that Nutter Butters, tinfoil hat people in that group, but that I was the reincarnation of Lucifer. Don't ask me why they said that.
Lucifer reincarnated, all right.
Yeah, or an incarnation or whatever. So they referred, one person said you should check out the Luciferian Gnostics. And I'm like, all right. So, these little boys and girls were like, oh, yeah, the Satanism and stuff. So I started looking into it. Okay, so what they were saying didn't seem right. So I looked into it, and then I actually made a brief stop over at another pseudo-satanic group that I shall not name. And it didn't sound right to me either. And they were bashing the COS. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check out what COS is about.
Does that other group happen to be based around a fictional Egyptian animal?
No.
Okay.
It's people. It's the arts and crafts team.
All right. I'm tracking.
Yeah. So, it didn't sound right about the whole, reading the Satanic Bible. It's about personal accountability, doing what, benefits you and all that. And it just seemed like it was too herd-think.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem right. So I'm like, okay, if they're bashing on the COS, I might as well check it out before I make any judgment. Me, the COS, the Church of Satan, just seemed to have everything lined up with the Satanic Bible. Everything that I read about it, I agreed with. So it's just like, okay, I think I could say with 100% certainty I found the real deal. So, send in my membership.
Now, was this before or after the Air Force?
After.
Okay. All right, interesting. And I'm curious about that because I know that it's usually whenever there's a moment of religious panic in the military, it seems to come out of the Air Force for whatever reason.
Yeah, it wasn't long after the Air Force. So,
what was the religious environment, if any, like in the Air Force? Was it like overtly Christian, or was it just kind of something you didn't really worry about?
I avoided it.
Okay.
Even though I had Christian on my dog tag, it just made the most sense so I didn't get grief, but I avoided it. So,
okay.
I was, back in tech school, I was put in the position of white rope for a little while, but I surrendered that to go live off base. But after that, I kind of gave up on the religious stuff.
Sure. So, all right. So you're at the point in your philosophical journey, let's say, where you've decided you send in your application, like you said. So what about, like, you read the Satanic Bible, you understood what Satanism was. What made you decide to take that extra step and actually join the Church of Satan?
It was mostly, to show my support because I'm sure you know as well as any, the admin go through a lot of garbage day in and out, with crazy nutters and diffusing all these hogwash, nasty rumors, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I figured I should give respect where it's due, and I wasn't sure how active I would be with other members of the church when I sent in the money,
Right.
But, a few relationships.
To me, you showed a love for Transformers, and I accepted you with open arms. I love you.
But those are my archetypes. So
Transformers are your archetypes. I like that.
Oh, you haven't seen the conversations. Evelyn and I have gone back and forth with Transformers and sending pictures of different ones we got. Oh, wow, that's like, a vintage one. Wow.
Yeah, that's like porn to me.
Right. So that instantly made me think, Transformers are your archetype. It instantly made me think of a book. And that's, I think, a good segue into you are now a writer. That's what you do. So talk about that. Like, where did you get started in that? How have you evolved that process?
Well, when I was younger, I had a severe speech impediment, and until I went through a lot of courses, writing was my primary form of communication. So 4, 5, 6, I was writing. But when I took a knack to it. When I was in kindergarten, I was reading and writing up at a 7th, 8th grade level. And I've just been writing my whole life. Writing, and I publish very little, but I write a lot.
Right, like any good writer. Yeah. Yeah, and, due to certain factors in my life, I've always been fascinated by human perception, religion still, even though, a lot of religious themes and archetypes and what have you get included in my stories and symbolism, like guys like Joseph Campbell and stuff like that. So my writing is, I try to let it evolve with my life experiences. And it's just been such a part of me for the last, I won't tell you my age, but it's a long time. It's just like, I don't even think about it unless I'm asked, So right now I'm working on a book. I'm actually trying to want to do a mecha book, giant robot. That doesn't translate into. Of course you do.
Medium. Yeah. It's about time, huh? Yeah.
All right. So let me ask you this: as a professional writer, it's a twofold question. What was the first piece that you ever got published, and are you still proud of it?
The first piece I got published was under my what I call my dead name, so I don't mention it a whole lot.
Okay.
But what I published first under my preferred name is it's under revision. It's been going through an extensive process. It's Book 0.
Okay.
The title will be changed once it's done. I got some artists in on it, and the revision is going to be pretty big. And yeah, I'm still proud of it. It needs a lot of cleaning up, but I've been working on it on and off since I was 8. So it's kind of evolved. It went with this simple kid saving the town from this monster thing, and then it just slowly evolved into more complex, existential, philosophical piece. So
it sounds like a lot of your writing is based on things like, philosophy, obviously, and religion, that kind of thing, but also on science fiction. So do you have to do a lot of research in your process, or do you just kind of make it up as you go?
A little bit of both. What it is I don't fancy myself to be a scientist or whatever. I'll pull in speculative science as quickly as I'll pull in, the quote unquote real deal stuff. When you're writing fiction, it's not about writing realistically. It's about keeping to a set of rules set in your universe. So if you take a pseudoscientific concept, bring it in your fiction piece, as long as you keep that rule constant and it does its job. If I wanted realism, I would read an essay,
right, or a college piece or whatever,
something like that. Yeah, but so if it sounds good from a story perspective, and I could somehow transfer it over to some symbolism or a metaphor or an allegory, I'll do that too, because a lot of fiction and stuff just has constant running metaphor and symbolism in it, and it's not to be taken literally. So
awesome. I think that's a really good approach to that. All right, so I was talking to the guys during the intro. We were discussing because today, the day that we're recording this for the listener, is Religious Freedom Day in the United States. So, can you give us your thoughts and your opinions on religious freedom and why that's such an important thing and what it means to you?
Well, we as human beings, we live in a big, scary universe. Things are uncertain for most of us. We need something to help us cope. And so I think it's an essential part, even if you're an atheist, having some sort of dogmatic practice. I think it's healthy for you. And I think a society that completely casts aside its dogma and its religious structures, it becomes sterile. A lot of creativity is stunted. The catharsis is gone. Everything kind of starts falling into a nihilistic field. So religion but then we need the freedom of it. So we can't all be pigeon because religion is not one size fits all. It's just like Satanism isn't for everybody. Christianity isn't for everybody.
Right.
Buddhism isn't for everybody. And as long as you're not forcing me into it or using government to push your religious dogma, I have no problem with what you practice. And in fact, I have this thing where if I know someone who claims to be Christian but they're not right with God, their God, I don't want to really be around them too much because they usually have a lot of baggage. They have it.
Yeah. Hypocrisy is certainly a warning sign of deeper-seated issues in most cases. Yeah, I agree with that.
So it's like that. It's like I don't think religion needs to die like a lot of people. I just think it just needs to stay out of government, and that's about it with it.
It has its place.
Yes, it does.
But that place is not commanding anyone else.
Nope.
Exactly.
All right. So before we go to our next break, do you have anything out right now you'd like to, I hate to say plug, but it's the right term. Do you have any books or short stories or anything out there that you'd like to direct people towards?
Well, I'm just going to do the lazy thing and say I have an Amazon page.
There you go.
Go to my Amazon page because I got a lot of stuff. I've appeared in a lot of anthologies like Hydra's Infernal Inc. I've been in The Devil's Due. I've been in Ladies and Gentlemen of Horror a couple of years. I do my own work.
Speaking of writer and Hydra, have you seen her new offer for her new group to get involved with, and have you done that?
I've been avoiding groups a lot lately.
Just like smartphones and computers and.
I had to charge my potato.
Right.
Well, I was just more making you aware of it if you didn't know.
Oh yeah, I know she has it. She's a real good. She's really good at what she does, and she's letting me know about it.
She's a good person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shameless plug for Infernal Inc. and all the Hydra's doing there.
We plug everything on here. Yeah. If it's worth plugging, we plug it and give people their due.
Your Amazon, is that under Evelyn Eve or is that like under okay?
It's under Evelyn Eve, but since I'm indie, it's a little harder to find. You just got to know a few of my books, like Book Zero or Jane the Stripper, and then you just type in my name and one of my book titles, and it takes you to my Amazon link. So.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and discuss some pertinent veteran news that affects veterans and military members around the world. Do you want to stick around for that, or?
I'm actually going to bounce. All this talking about my stories has given me a couple ideas I need to go put down on paper before I can get them. So.
Oh, outstanding. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Evelyn, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Pleasure hearing your story, and until we can talk again, hail Satan.
Confessions of a Wicked Witch with Magistra Igraine.
It won't be long before a bunch of Wiccans and pagans and airy-fairy fairies decide to say this show is not actually a show by a witch, because a real witch, as far as they're concerned, cannot be a Satanist because she doesn't follow their silly little rules. Well, of course, that's called being a selfish bitch. When you say that I can't be a witch but you can because you have a monopoly on the definition, that makes you no different than the rotten Christians who try to tell everybody that they're the only good people, the only decent people, the only people who have any voice of morality. So, for the purposes of this show, when I use the term witch, I'm using the term as used by Anton LaVey in his book, The Complete Witch or The Satanic Witch, or What to Do When Virtue Fails. And my virtue failed some time ago.
Confessions of a Wicked Witch. Listen now at radiofreesatan.com.
Seriousness is next to godliness. Faith is a virtue for the solemn and serious mind. Be God-fearing, and laugh not, for laughter is a tool of the devil. Remain pious and sanctimonious at all times. Laughter is an evil which, oh, the hell with it.
Listen to The Devil's Mischief, a unique weekly podcast of most carnal comedy and netherworld novelty, hosted by your most irreverent Reverend, Bill M., who serves up a new devilishly delightful mix of laughter each and every week on The Devil's Mischief. Tune in and indulge your funny bone today. Listen to The Devil's Mischief, available now at radiofreesatan.com.
The podcast you are listening to is brought to you through Radio Free Satan. To get the new episodes of this show downloaded automatically to your PC or mobile device, you can subscribe to this podcast and your other Radio Free Satan shows too, by using iTunes or Stitcher or other subscription means. To find out how, go to radiofreesatan.com and visit the individual page for this program, where you'll find the subscription links for iTunes, Stitcher, and more under Subscribe. You can also rate and review the program on iTunes and Stitcher. Thank you for your support of Radio Free Satan, and now back to the show.
All right, welcome back to the Infernal Legion podcast. Great interview we had with Evelyn. I mean, she's an incredible human being. That's for damn sure. But this is the part of the show for you regular listeners where we get into military and veteran news that affects everything. And the first article that we had to talk about is an article that was published in the Military Times about the greater threat to military veterans, an invisible enemy or broken promises, is the title of the article. It was written by Sherman Gillums Jr. And essentially, the article and the idea here is that the things that we are exposed to overseas that aren't the enemy and aren't necessarily psychological conditions, but just the environment itself or the ways in which we decide to shape the environment are more deadly to veterans than the enemy itself. And I think all of us are very in touch with that notion. At least I know for sure Duwayne and I were exposed to burn pits in Iraq and me in Afghanistan. And I know that being on a ship for 10 or 11 months at a time, you're going to be exposed to some shit you probably shouldn't be. So I think all three of us have a little bit.
Anything we received on land, he was exposed to first because he was bringing it to us.
Not quite. I wasn't on an auxiliary ship.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's your fault that I have rickets.
Saber-toothed crotch cricket.
I admire your honesty.
But yeah, so obviously there's a lot of figures and facts in this that's discussing what the government now is paying off to veterans of Vietnam who were exposed to Agent Orange. And the idea being that we have, as a nation, as a military, we have the mentality of win now, pay later. That's the big key there. So, for example, in Vietnam, we discovered that if we destroyed the foliage in the jungle, that we could see the enemy better rather than having them creep up on us in the jungle. And so we started pouring Agent Orange all over the jungle without thinking about what effects it may have on the individuals who were standing there while it was being deployed in the jungle. And then the later cost of what that comes out to be, which as of 2020 is, $280 billion that we have spent just to take care of vets who are exposed to Agent Orange. And so the question then becomes, and this is where I'm going to turn it over to you guys and see what you have to say about it. The question then becomes, what have we, coming from essentially 2 different generations and probably 4 or 5 different wars, or at least military engagements, what have we been exposed to that they don't even know about yet?
Well, with the burn pits, you never know what you're exposed to. Because it basically anything and everything was thrown into burn pits during the Gulf War, plus all the crap that, went like there during Desert Storm when the Iraqis set the oil fields on fire. You never know what's actually in crude oil like that, the way it was set off. So,
well, Halliburton was running the contractors who were running the burn pits, and I mean they had us working on them too, but they were throwing everything in there. Yeah. There was no rules like here in the United States. Separate plastic over here, separate medical supplies, incinerate those medical supplies so you get all the germs, get all the shit so it's not going into the air filters, shit like that to filter out stuff. You didn't have it over there. You just you burned the stuff and it went into the air.
Yep.
If you were downwind of it, you breathed it.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that with the burn pit exposure, which is kind of the new big thing that's coming out right now from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I don't know anybody who was deployed that didn't come in contact with smoke from a burn pit at some point or another.
Right.
I mean, every major base had them, and every smaller base had to go through a major base. So at some point, you were breathing in crap from a burn pit.
And here's something I'm still fighting, and we know I know how to fight the VA, but depleted uranium poisoning is something that is coming out.
Yeah, you've talked about this before. This is a perfect topic. Why don't you tell us about it?
Your sabot rounds that you have, sabot meaning your armor-piercing rounds you have over there, that the Iraqis were stockpiling, be it Russian, be it U.S., or whoever sold it to them, because both Russia and us sold them weapons. I mean, we were Iraq's best friend when Iraq was fighting Iran in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But sabot rounds, when those Iraqi soldiers were out in the desert, they had them buried in the ground. They had them underground in little sand areas like we would do for sandbag pits or sandbag, enclosures, whatever. And they would sit out there, and the radioactivity in them would decay.
Mm-hmm.
I myself cannot have children. My nuts are fried.
Congratulations.
Yay.
But I can still blow a load as good as any other guy can. So
that's too much information.
Hey, if you're gonna antagonize me, I'm gonna come back.
Well, I'm talking about the audience might not want to hear that.
Yeah, well, I don't want to hear you telling me I can't have a fucking kid, you bastard. I'm 47 years old.
I would ask forgiveness from the audience, but they're all Satanists, so.
My teeth are bad. The enamel on them is like pane glass. My enamel breaks off. I've got horrible teeth, and I ain't gonna say that. But he
has 12 nipples.
No. But I have shown my flappy nipple, the one that I lost my nipple ring out of. It flaps and it talks. We did that at Devil's Reign. That was But let's just say I'm not very fond of dentists.
Who's the slimy little communist shit twinkle toad cocksucker down here who just signed his own death warrant?
And that's one of the big problems over there, and there's starting to be a big fight with that. You've got the tinnitus problem with the ears that you're seeing even on Facebook.
Yep.
Trying to get you to sign up for this lawsuit and that lawsuit. These fucking ambulance chaser lawyers that get your information, and now once you sign up for it, and don't sign up for it, guys. If you want to do it, find yourself a military lawyer or a lawyer who is certified in military justice and go through it with him.
Because honestly, next thing you know, they're going to make a ruling against them, and you're going to get a settlement of all of $12 because there's so many of you involved.
Well, that you sign up for one of these things on Facebook. I did it the other day when I was looking for my new Harley, and I haven't received a robocall since I've been down here. I probably received a robocall in a year and a half. I fucking put in my information for that Harley, and I got 15 robocalls in about 40 minutes, and then the Harley dealership called me, and they married me up with Rockstar down in Fort Myers, Jeff. and I've got one closer, Sarasota.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother story. But just don't do nothing on this Facebook. If you got ear problems, whatever, find yourself somebody certified who's a civilian that can do military law or understands it, because
there's actually that brings up a good point. So in our Facebook group that we have for the Infernal Legion, the question was raised by a foreign veteran. Do we not, and by foreign I mean non-U.S. for those listening,
right.
Do we not get hazardous duty pay? And the answer to that is yes, we do. We get hazardous duty pay when we are deployed, but the hazardous duty pay is meant to be an immediate, let's say, Band-Aid on the fact that you are now going into an area where you may very realistically be shot, blown up, get sick, whatever the case may be. It's not meant to be a form of pay because it's a very low amount. It's, I think, maybe $200, maybe a little bit more than that. It's not meant to be, and that's per month, by the way, but it's not meant to be a fixer-upper amount of money. So when we talk about like benefits that veterans are entitled to after they get out, we're talking about these long-term things. Yeah, you paid me $200 a month because I might get shot, but you didn't take care to, like Duwayne was saying earlier, put an air filter on the fucking burn pit.
Yep.
And now I have cancer.
Well, here's something to go further with that. You can look at that $200 a month like paying car insurance. You might get into an accident, but you're not. You're paying something out to that soldier because, but this is to go even further on what you were saying about the foreign soldier asking that. I've had a foreign soldier. I've explained it the way you have, Lou, and they said, no, we're talking about after you get home and you're injured. Do you get money, or why do you get money?
And that's what we're fighting for now.
What I explained to them. Because they said when we sign up for our country, we're signing up because we love our country, and if we get injured or die, oh well. We did it because we wanted to do it for our country, and there is no bellyache, and you want compensation for it. And
I don't know if that's entirely true though, because every developed world has veterans benefits for their veterans.
Well, and this is what I explained to them. I said, well, this is because most of your countries run under a socialist or a social
democratic socialism.
Democratic socialism, like England. You have free medical care, don't you? Whereas me, I'm injured, I go to a hospital, I'm paying out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
But even England, even the UK, any of the countries.
I'm not picking England out or.
No, I know. What I'm saying is that any of those developed European countries, even Canada, offers disability compensation to veterans. So I don't know where they're getting that idea from. Like every developed country offers disability compensation.
I had a soldier from the English. What the fuck was he? He was an English infantryman, but they call it something else. And he was like, fuck that, I got injured over there. I can't work, and now I'm in the gutter. I struggle every day for money and this and that.
Well, I mean, so don't hurt.
And we just don't have those programs available to us. It wasn't like a Vietnam vet who's been homeless for 40 years because the government, said that, yeah, you were a vet, but you don't get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That was just where my point was going. Right. Is that I've had people say, why do you get disability money? Why are you crying for money when?
Well, I mean, let me be very clear about that. I am personally a very anti-entitlement person. However, if I permanently damage myself in service to my country, regardless of the reasons I joined, and mind you, a lot of those countries still have mandatory service, so that whole patriotic bullshit can go right out the fucking window.
Right.
But if I permanently injure myself in service to my country, yeah, give me something, motherfucker. Because I didn't die. If I had died, okay, no big deal, right? Because I don't need the money. I'm dead, but I'm alive, and I still have to live. I still have to eke out an earning somehow, and yet I can't do X, Y, and Z because I have a bum knee, or I have, collapsed vertebrae, or whatever the case may be. And this article shines a light on some of that process because it talks up and we talked about the burn pits and the depleted uranium and things like that, but it's also talking about things that the government doesn't necessarily think about when they start a war in a foreign country. Mm-hmm. And it could be things as little as the vaccines that you have to get in order to go to the country.
Anthrax.
Yeah, the anthrax vaccine is a big one. Malaria is another big one.
Yeah.
Malaria and anthrax vaccines can literally fuck you up.
Well, I remember for the longest time you weren't able to come home and give blood or plasma because you had those vaccines. They're good enough to give you. They're good enough to give you and protect you while you're over there, but you can't give blood. You can't give plasma.
And then there's other things. There's environmental hazards like Vietnam's an easy target because they were in jungles, but even Iraq and Afghanistan, you have things that like camel spiders and pit vipers and
sand fleas.
All kinds of things that can pass these diseases on to you that you can't control. There's no controlling that. They just come and they do their animals.
They use their desert as a litter box. I mean, people shit and piss, and they don't have a sanitation system.
No, and that's a great example. When you're on, when you pack your assault pack to go out on a patrol, you pack one MRE. If you're lucky enough to be in a truck, you might have a case of MREs. Right. But if you're out on patrol for 2 to 3 weeks, those MREs run out, and you got to eat the local food.
Yep.
And
your body is just not.
Who knows?
That was one of the worst mistakes I ever made when I was in Hawaii. I went over to Thailand for Cobra Gold, and they said, watch the indigenous female personnel because they may not be female, and they said, do not eat at any local places. And I got the nastiest case of food poisoning ever, chicken and rice.
Well, when I was on PSD for the PSYOP guys, our mission was to go out into the communities, and we had to sit with them. I had to kill a goat so the village could eat it with us. You know, I don't know how they're preparing that food, but it's part of the mission. It's what I have to do. I have to eat their food the way
they do wipe their ass with their left hand.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of viral and biological things entering our bodies that haven't even been brought up to the VA yet.
Well, you look at it as the English coming over on the Mayflower and infecting the Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
The Aztecs are no longer around because the Spanish brought over,
what up the disease.
Exactly. That's what you look at it as.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole list of concerns that veterans face that the government didn't even consider, and is still
I'm sure they considered it. Yeah. They just took the easiest way out.
Yeah.
In some cases, for sure. But yeah, I think the overall message to this is that if you're a vet of any war and you had to deploy overseas and something's just not right with you, go see the VA. Make a case. It's going to be a hell of a fucking process, but in the end, 9 times out of 10, you will win that ruling.
I'm going to do one more thing here, Jeff, on that.
Sure.
Even after coming home for an acid, I was put on ranitidine by the VA. As we all know now, the whole Zantac lawsuit is stretched around it having MDMA in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ranitidine. The chemical ranitidine. It sure fixed my fucking acid reflux and my acid in my stomach, but it's cancer causing, and the VA gave it to me. So you don't necessarily have to be in theater either for this stuff to happen. I was on oral morphine for 14 years in varying doses. There could be problems that are going to arise from that. Or may not going to, but may arise from that. So it don't necessarily even have to be theater things either. The VA's got its problems with some of the stuff it's given you.
Okay, as a recall to what just happened, what we were just talking about, the first chief of Space Force was just sworn in. I just got this notification.
Chief what?
The
Secretary of the Space Force.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying like the Secretary of the Navy next.
Yeah, this literally just happened as we were talking.
No,
and I got the
it happened a couple days ago.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, I just got a notification that was happening right now. There's a live stream. So.
Who did they get? That African American gentleman who's smart as fuck that does the space things?
I don't know. I'm not going to watch a live video while we're talking on here.
Oh, I'm trying to crack a joke, you prick. That's why you keep. That's why you keep me
I'm
around
sorry.
Here.
It was Sir Patrick Stewart. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Well, that would have to mean that Space Force is going to be international, huh?
But yeah, so no, Space Force is actually going to happen. And that was a terrible segue, but that was a thing that just popped up on my phone. So,
wait, well, when you went, hey, I thought you were trying to kindly say, "Shut the fuck up, Duwayne."
I'm wondering if this guy. I would never be kind to you, Duwayne. First of all,
I know that.
And second of all,
I've known you how many years?
I'm wondering if he was chosen a few days ago, and they're doing the live swearing right now.
No, he's already been sworn in.
I don't know.
Well, you two fucking sit there and argue about it.
There you go. Privately, this is the public swearing that's happening.
The private actual swearing in happened a couple days ago. This is the public one.
So this is a legitimate thing. This is happening. Space Force is a real fucking thing. How long have we been joking about this, Duwayne?
Oh my God! Well, since I was back up at since before show one. Shit, I remember when we did it I remember when we did it on another show that you did with another member of the Church of Satan.
Yeah. Wow, fucking Space Force. All right. So the next article we have is another one from the Military Times. This one's by Leo Shane III, and the point of this article is thousands of housing vouchers for veterans went unused last year.
This is just going to piss me off.
Yeah.
Get into this one.
So here's the thing. I would like for our podcast to help veterans who are in a bad way to get that, but I'm assuming that a veteran who's legitimately homeless and is having struggles like that isn't going to hear our podcast. So that's the unfortunate part of this, but we can still talk about it. Back in 2008, the Housing and Urban Development Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing Program was launched. And what this program does is it offers several, almost 50,000 vouchers every year, which, as we all know, is barely a drop in the hat when it comes to homeless veterans. But it offers these vouchers that allow these homeless veterans to cash in and go to
low-income housing.
Yeah, they basically get into the projects, essentially.
Get them off the streets and into houses.
But at the very least, they have a roof over, and it's designed for them. The problem is that last year, 38,000 of these vouchers went unused by homeless veterans, and they're blaming it officially on lack of marketing, basically, of the program, so that homeless people don't know that it exists, or homeless veterans don't know that it exists. But I think if you're involved in the VA system, this is a thing that probably should be mentioned to you if you're homeless.
Yeah.
So I look at this as less of a marketing fail and more of an overall VA fail. Yet again, the VA failing their veterans on letting them know that these programs exist that can help them, much like they don't inform veterans that things like acupuncture or medical marijuana are available to veterans. They don't let them know that things like the vocational rehabilitation program is available to veterans, so on and so forth. It seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, feel free to crucify me if I am. I know you will in the comments. But it seems to me like the VA has yet again implemented a program that is a very beneficial program that is failing veterans because they are not doing it right.
Well, another thing that is a problem is the rent costs are going up.
Yeah.
Especially here in Central Florida, you know, you got to work 3 jobs just to make rent, and that's not including anything else.
So even if you have the voucher, you still can't afford it.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a problem. That's an economic problem that we could talk about for a long time.
There's also a lot of problems. I mean, we could talk about 2 different types of vouchers, too. A voucher just to short-term help a vet out. But vets are also eligible for Section 8 housing, which falls under a whole different thing. And being a combat vet, the 3 of us, if we become homeless, go in, sign up for Section 8 housing, and we are bumped to the front of the line. Usually Section 8 housing is something that somebody signs up for and they hope to get it in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Being vets that are combat vets, we are bumped to the front of the line. and you could hear something within 2 weeks, a month. And a lot of times they try to help you by getting you into something short term, like a hotel that'll pay, $80 a week or whatever it may be. I know when it happened to me when I was homeless, my local VA, they put me up in a hotel for 2 weeks, and boom, Section 8 came through. They inspected a place. They made sure the inspection was good, and I was moved into there. But, I've also encountered in places where you have your legislators that are in the town, and they get control or a controlling vote in it. And they say, oh, well, we're going to have a real bad winter this year, so we're going to take 60% of them and we're going to hold them back and make sure we have enough for these 4 months that the winter is going to be bad. And there's going to be months that vets don't get any, and then the winter wasn't bad and they have them all left over, and then they bitch we didn't use them.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of factors to play with that, for sure. But, okay, so it begs the question with programs like the Section 8 housing, or HUD, or whatever you want to call it.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah, and then
urban development.
And then the voucher program through the VA that's in connection with HUD. We still have several hundreds of thousands of vets that are homeless. Now, granted, some of these vets are suffering from severe mental illness. That's something that can be helped, and drug addiction and things like that. And these are things that this program isn't going to really be able to help. But that still leaves hundreds of thousands of vets who are just homeless because they can't get in. So let me ask you guys, where do you think the chain is broken in this?
Congress?
Local legislators in your town, your councilman, your mayor, people that want to...
They want the money, but they don't want to do the service.
They want to say, we'll give you the money, but we want to have our say, and we want to have our person in there to cast a vote or to say what they want to say. And we want to be able to control it, as I was saying, with the winter months and stuff. Yeah. The example I gave earlier. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of it wasted that really isn't vets' fault for not coming in and wanting it. Because there were many times that I came in and I wanted it, and I felt I didn't get it. Either one, because they were saying, okay, we've only got so many we can give out this month. Not that we've got a vet that needs somewhere to sleep, or he's going to die or could die, and I'm going to help this vet as much as I can. It's, we only have so many to give out this month, and we ran out, and now you can't have one. Or you're a male vet, and go out and tough it out because we might need it for a female vet, and I want to take care of the females and stuff. I'm not being sexist there or anything. I'm just saying.
Don't fucking apologize, Duwayne. Don't fucking apologize.
I am just saying situations that I felt I've run into before that are just purely bullshit excuses that have been given.
So, to that end, and this is because I'm a pragmatic human being, if the flaw seems to be with local and state control over this voucher system, what is the solution, do you think?
That's a little complicated for a short answer.
Well, I know in Knox County there in Ohio, which is just a couple counties over from you, we have a Veterans Commission made up of people that are voted in. People from the AMVETS, people from the Purple Heart, and you get one individual, so on and so forth. Yeah, right. One individual from each of the organizations, and they sit on a council, kind of like the city council, and they meet every 2 weeks. Somebody who has financial woes, such as, I couldn't pay my electric bill. I couldn't pay this, I had to put out money for my car breaking down, so I couldn't pay this. You can ask them, and they have money that is given to them by the city, by the state, that they dip into, and they all look at your situation. They look at, okay, has this guy been sitting down in the VFW swilling Bud Light, and now he's asking.
Well, fuck yeah, it only costs 50 cents. Of course he has.
You know what I'm saying? and they basically take a vote on it. And I agree with vets being able to control it, to be able to, help other vets. I guess is where I'm going.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
Rather than having some elected official who's never served a day in his life in the military come in and say, all right, how are we going to do this? If I hold money back and it shows that we didn't need that many vouchers, next year we won't have to allot so many because we didn't use them.
I think part of the problem too is, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think part of the problem is the processing time within the VA. It takes the VA on average 45 days to process any request by a veteran. If I'm living on the streets, if I'm homeless, and I go to the VA and I say I need a place to stay, and they say, oh, well, let me start processing your voucher request. I don't necessarily have a guaranteed way back to the VA within 45 days. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Normally you do. And what I was explaining to you about each of these vets.
No.
Is on a
what I'm saying is I don't have a way back to the VA. I mean, there's any number of things that could happen. Like, for example, the police arrest me, and many cities have come under fire for this, and they drop you off outside of the city limits. I can't take public transportation back to the VA from outside of the city limits.
Right.
So.
Well, I was misunderstanding you, because normally you can go into your veterans office and your VSO has money that's been given to him by the city and the state, and they've got a veterans van that will drive you to the VA every day if you have to go every day.
But if you're in a legitimate homeless situation, and what I mean by legitimate is like there is no other option for you. You probably don't have a phone.
Well, that's another problem. For most programs, you have to have an address or a residence. You have to have an established residence in order to apply for benefits.
I feel like in the age of the internet, that if a veteran goes into the VA and presents paperwork for whatever the claim may be, whether it's for a voucher, whether it's for, disability compensation, whatever, that someone should be able to process that right then and there. And at the worst case scenario, within a week. Let's say a week.
Well, unfortunately, our disability claims go through numerous adjudicators who got to sit there and look at it and go, and it just, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Well, I know it doesn't.
If it did work that way, our country would go broke, because you'd have one guy deciding everybody's fate. And, if you sit there and say, okay, it's kind of like Bruce Almighty, he said yes to everybody, every prayer in the movie, and it fucked him over. The whole world went to hell.
I'm not talking about some guy just saying yes to everybody. What I'm talking about is a basic computer algorithm that can be written that says, like, oh, you had knee surgery while you were active duty? Well, then obviously your knee is fucked. So, yes, you're approved on that. And it can do it within a millisecond.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, unfortunately, that would make sense, and a lot of the military doesn't.
And the VA doesn't make it either.
I mean that would fall under military intelligence, and we know what that is.
Yeah, two words combined that don't make sense.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like there's a better way to do it that we're just ignoring. as a nation, as an organization, VA. There's better ways to go about this. However, that being said, like I said at the top of this article, I doubt anyone who is in this position will actually hear this podcast. But if you do, by any means, reach out to the VA and know that there are vouchers that exist for you to have a roof over your head. Because no one that has been willing to give everything for their country should ever want in their country for basic necessities. You may not ever be a billionaire. That's on you to figure that out. But you should at least have a fucking roof over your head, especially when we have so many empty homes around this country.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, all right. So moving on to our last article. This one's a little bit more of a happy story, although it does have some dark parts. But I wanted to get this word out there to anyone who may know this gentleman or his family. This happened in Pennsylvania, Montour County. I don't know where that is in Pennsylvania, but Montour County in Pennsylvania. While the storage unit owners were cleaning out an old storage unit, they found a medal, a Purple Heart, in an old storage unit. They recognized what it was, and they are trying to get the word out. So the situation behind this, I'm looking for the name right here. There we go. So the name is Seaman First Class Albert Helt of the U.S. Navy Reserves. Earned this Purple Heart in 1945 during World War II when he was killed off the coast of Japan. The Purple Heart was awarded to his wife, and now it turns up in the storage unit. So the owners of the storage unit are looking for the surviving family members of this veteran. This, where's his name again? Damn it, I just lost his name. Seaman First Class Helt. They're looking for the family of this gentleman to return his Purple Heart to that family. I'm going to read off the phone number to contact if anyone knows anything about Seaman First Class Helt, possibly served with them or maybe just heard stories about him and knows how to get in touch with his family. But before we get into that, I want to ask, Jeff is gone, so I want to ask Duwayne, what did you do with your medals when you got them? The little case and everything. I mean, you were pretty protective over those, yeah?
Yes, very. They're sitting in a framed wall pack with a football folded flag. I actually took a set of old Army Class A greens, cut them down the middle, put the pocket side for the medals on there, and pinned them all to it. I mean, it's an art.
So like a shadow box almost.
It's an art piece in the house.
Yeah. These and it's kind of counterintuitive because we say all the time. We've said it on this show. But I know in private we say it all the time. We don't do this for medals. We don't do this for awards. We don't do what we did for anything like that. But
yeah, because when you're in the military, when you've got to come out for formation or do any dinners or anything, you got to have everything spit polished and everything, the medals shining and everything. You'd much rather have less medals so you have less shit to put on that fucking uniform.
Well, yeah, there's the pain in the ass aspect. There's also the weird issuing aspect. But, it's not about the medals. It's not about the glory. It's not about the, anything like that. It's about a number of things for a number of different people. We all have different reasons why we joined. We all have different reasons why we served and did things. And the medals are just kind of a little icing on the cake. But, and I'm going to ask Jeff because he's back now.
Yeah.
But when we do get them, whether it's something as little as an Army Achievement Medal or something as big as the Congressional Medal of Honor, we take care of them. And we pack them up nice, and we pass them on to our children. And they mean something, even though we didn't do it for it. Does that make sense?
Exactly. The whole thing, it's like I've got the Kuwait Liberation Medal that Saudi Arabia gave out.
Mm-hmm.
Before I die, I'm going to give it to my daughters, or if they actually have any kids, I'll give it to my grandkids.
What year did you get yours, Jeff? I don't mean to interrupt you. What year?
I actually got it in 91.
91. I got mine in 91 too. Do you know that there's a limited number of them, and you know that it's a Saudi Arabia one because it's got a
Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on the box.
But no. But I'm saying the back of the medal isn't one of those with the pin that you stick through. It's actually got two like fork things.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Down.
That's what I got.
Well, though, if you look, your continent, your country of Saudi Arabia that's on there, those all were gold.
That's the rumor.
So you don't want to get rid of that one. If it's one of the other fake ones, it's not gold.
Yeah.
But while we were, and I'm getting off on one of my tangents, but while we were over there, the king of Saudi Arabia, King Fahad, wanted to give each soldier over there $10,000 for being there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this.
Oh yeah. No.
And George Bush said no.
Yeah.
The American soldiers are not mercenaries. They cannot accept that money. So when he created that medal, he put that little piece of gold on there. Yeah. It's just a fun piece of trivia. Yeah. And for those of you that have that original medal, don't get rid of it.
Okay, so side note on that. I may be the only one of the three of us who ever actually worked as a quote-unquote mercenary. But I kind of feel like mercenaries get a bad rap.
I am just saying what the president said. The soldiers get paid every month. They get combat pay, blah, blah, blah. He wanted to give every swinging dick soldier that was on the continent, or not continent, but
in region,
who was in,
I heard your story.
Theater.
It's okay to laugh at things, Duwayne.
You know what? I do laugh. I'm supposed to be the comedian on here.
But so like I was going to say, if you have any idea who this gentleman is or how to contact his family, that's Seaman First Class Helt. It's a Purple Heart that was awarded posthumously to his wife. Please contact the office of the storage unit at area code 570-271-3061. I know it's a long shot that not a lot of people who listen to this program probably know anything about it, but if you do have any information that could lead to getting this medal back to his family, I know they'd really appreciate it. And I'd like to think that veterans, as we often say, will look after
our own. Yeah.
So if you have any information about Seaman First Class Helt's family, please call that number and let them know they're trying to get this medal back to them. Well, gentlemen, hell of a way to ring in the new year.
Yeah.
And we didn't even talk about the heavy shit.
Oh. Stop talking about Duwayne like that.
Oh,
you bastard.
A jelly donut.
I almost played that.
Bastards.
Oh, wait.
Your days of finger banging, old Mary Jane Rottencrotch, through her pretty pink panties, are over.
What's that got to do with me being fat?
You owe me for one jelly donut.
There we go. That's the one.
I had to throw that other one in there because I've never been able to figure out where to stick that at. So I decided to stick it in there.
All right,
hey,
so
I'm very self-conscious about my fucking weight, you bastards.
No, yeah. Well, if you were
I gave up
do it, sit up.
I gave up I gave up the VA prescribed morphine and I picked up food. I'm fixing it.
Hey, I'm 280 pounds. I don't care. You can joke about my weight. I'll be along right with you.
Oh, I don't care either. I'm not being a bitch about it. I'm
whining.
having fun. Yeah, I'm having fun. I myself am not happy with my weight.
Yeah.
Well, that got really serious.
If you notice, last year for Devil's Reign, I was in pictures all over the place. Fucking blah, blah, blah. This year I didn't take many pictures. Because every time I looked at them, I went, boo.
That's what I do every time I see a picture of you.
Fuck off. You prick.
Another prick, maybe.
Huge shout out and thank you to Evelyn Eve for being our Wicked Warrior of the Month. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining me as always. It's always an awesome time bullshitting and laughing and talking about serious shit with both of you guys.
Yep.
And tune in next month for a February edition of the official Infernal Legion podcast right here on Radio Free Satan. Until next time, gentlemen, hail Satan.
Good night, lady. 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 Good night.